The Emperor Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, Meditations, Book 1. Disclaimer: I'm reading this book for my own deepening of understanding of his books, and whoever enjoys this is my collection of my own thoughts and reflection on his thoughts. So this is not polished in any way. It's just me deepening the knowledge 1600 years apart. The example of my father versus gave me a good disposition, not prone to anger. 2. By the recollection of my father's character, I learned to be both modest and manly. 3. As for my mother, she taught me to have regard for religion, to be generous and open-handed, and not only to forbear from doing anybody an ill turn, but not so much as to endure the thought of it. By her likewise, I was bred to a plain, inexpensive way of living, very different from the common luxury of the rich. 4. I have to thank my great-grandfather, that I did not go to a public school. Funny enough, I went to two of them, but had good masters at home, and learned to know that one ought to spend liberally on such things. Yeah, that's one of my own things as well. I've been obsessed with learning since I was a toddler. 5. From my governor, I learned not to join either the green or the blue faction on the race ground, nor to support the parliamularius or scuterius at the gladiators shows. Okay, this is basically their football matches. I was a Manchester United fan, but now I'm just my own life team fan club fan. He taught me also to put my own hand to business upon occasion, to endure hardship and fatigues, and to throw the necessities of nature into a little compass, that I ought not to meddle with other people's business, nor be easy in giving credit to informers. Okay, this part I'm kind of hesitant in understanding of it, because so he's basically saying the richest man in the Babylon thing, but at the same time he's also mentioning that basically no social media scrolling, that I call it neo-cannibalism, because you literally are feeding off of others' flesh. You're literally salivating over other people's skin, but basically no social scrolling. Gotcha. And personally, I've been so lovely and lively almost 5 months of no social scrolling. I create, I curate, I construct, and I dip out. That's literally it. From diagnosis to shun vain pursuits, not to be led away with the impostures of wizards and soothsayers, who pretend they can discharge evil spirits, and do strange feats by the strength of a charm, not to keep quails for the pit, nor to be eager after any such thing. This diagnosis taught me to bear freedom and plain dealing in others, and apply myself to philosophy, Yeah, basically, he is saying he is passionate about his passion, and funny enough, I was always fond of philosophy and thinking deeply about things, even when I didn't know what depth of thinking meant or what philosophy represented. That to some extent I still don't know, but that's why I read to understand. And I write to recontextualize my own thoughts in writing and my own language, because my language is not uh, philosophy. My language, those are my ears. Philosophy, psychology, and everything, any information is my ears. My tongue is metaphors, similes, and symbols that I actually write with through storytelling. He also procured me the instruction of the Bacchius, Tandesis, and Martianus. Okay, I think these are philosophers. He likewise put me upon improving myself by writing dialogues when I was a boy, prevailed with me to prefer a couch covered with hides to a bed of state, and reconciled me to other like rigorous of the Grecian discipline. Okay, so basically the Buddhist discipline that less is more, but basically just having covered the basics in the basic forms, and yeah, basically it's just find your passion and go deep on that, and everything else is just sustainability. I fucked with that. Okay. It was Rusticus that first made me desire to live rightly and come to a better state, who prevented me from running into the vanity of the sophists, either by writing speculative treatises, haranguing, okay, that's a word, upon moral subjects, or making a fantastical appearance or display of generosity or discipline. This guy understood social media before social media was even a thing, bruh. Yeah, basically, like my current book that I'm writing, it's been almost like 60,000 words and counting. Um, is about identity and how you don't. Um, the dilemma is that you literally betray your identity for survival, and slowly that survival erodes your identity, that you know something is wrong when you look in the mirror, but you don't know why and you don't know what, because it requires self-awareness and distance from your survival. Because if you are your survival instinct, you become the survival animal, and when you are the survival animal, you just are a pit bull clinging onto more security, more fame, more whatever. That's even literally my view on billionaires, that even billionaires, like, I'm not gonna name drop anyone, but so many of these billionaires are set for life, but because they are so obsessed with gathering money, and gathering money is no one's passion, they literally are confused, that they don't even understand, okay, why am I gathering money for? I'm not gonna name drop, but one of these billionaires, soon to be billionaire, has openly said his dream is to become a billionaire and document how to do it. And that's literally shows me there is no passion, because passion is a craft, passion is a mastery, passion is pursuit of something that doesn't even matter to you, the external validation for it. I don't write like for people's validation. I write for the understanding of my own thoughts, and to share my own thoughts to help others, you know. But yeah. 7. It was uh, Rusticus, yeah, that first made me desire to live rightly. Okay, I read this, but I'm gonna read it again. It was Rusticus that first made me desire to live rightly and come to a better state. He prevented me from running into the vanity of the sophist, either by writing speculative treatises haranguing upon moral subjects, or making a fantastical appearance or display of generosity or discipline. This philosopher kept me from yielding to the charms of rhetoric and poetry, from affecting the character of a man of pleasantry, from wearing my senator's robe in the house, or anything of this kind, which looks like conceit and affection. He taught me to write letters in a plain, ornamental style, like that dated by him from Sinisa to my mother. By his instructions, I was persuaded to be easily reconciled to those who had misbehaved themselves, and disobliged me as soon as they desired reconciliation. And the same master I learned to read an author carefully, not to take up with a superficial view or assent quickly to idle talkers. Bro, I love this guy. This guy is literally um, the embodiment of hyper connected cognitive processing, because not only he recognizes patterns in others, but also he contradicts himself on a very fast-paced speed that it's beyond metacognition, that you literally observe your own thoughts. He is literally observing his own thoughts contradicting themselves in real time and trying to find order in his own chaos, which is fantastic. Most of people don't even understand that, because you need to be like that kind of cognitive processing power. It's not even intelligence, it's just different neurological wiring. But this is so fascinating. 100 1600 years ago, this guy was this kind of sharp with his own thoughts, and he wrote this like about when he was 40 something years old, right? So and to conclude with him, he gave me his own copy of Epictetus' memoirs. Apollonius taught me 8. Apollonius, these names, taught me to give my mind its due freedom and disengage it from dependence upon chance, and not to regard, though ever so little, anything uncountenanced by reason. Uncountenanced, Jesus, these words. Although English is not my native language, but Jesus, these words. To maintain an equality of temper, even in acute pains and loss of children or tedious sickness. His practice was an excellent instance that a man may be forcible and yet unbend his humor as occasion requires. Okay, this is fantastic, because he literally says you being consistent in your personality not only gains more trust of other people, but governs yourself as this person who has upper hand over his emotions. Interesting. The heaviness and impertinence of his scholars could seldom rouse his ill temper or rouse. Yeah, it comes from arouse, right? As for his learning and the peculiar happiness of his manner in teaching, he was so far from being proud of himself upon this score. This ties me back to Mark Manson's one of the Mark Manson's quotations that interesting enough, Mark Manson was a dating coach that became a two times or three times bestseller. That's how random life seems from outside. But yeah, one of the Mark Manson's quotations is that he literally says, even governing yourself and being above kind of the majority of people who are ruled by emotions could literally translate into another superficial superiority, um, narcissism, that you are better than the rest, you know? And this is literally basically what he is saying. The as for As for his learning and the peculiar happiness of his manner in teaching, he was so far from being proud of himself upon this score. Basically, literally, he knew he was objectively better than others in teaching and understanding and depth of cognitive processing, but he didn't let himself be delusioned by this falsified pride. So far from being proud of himself upon this score, that one might easily perceive. He thought it one of the least things which belonged to him. That's beautiful. He literally said this is how it's supposed to be rather than I'm this way. This great man let me into the true secret of receiving an obligation without either listening myself or seeming ungrateful to my friend. 9. The philosopher Sextus recommended good humor to me and showed me the pattern of a household governed in a fatherly manner. He also bade me make nature and reason my rule to live by. By his precedent, I was instructed to appear with an unaffected gravity, to study the temper and circumstances of my friends in order to oblige them. I saw him bearing with the ignorant and undiscerning, complacent and obliging to all people, so that his conversation was more charming than flattery. Interesting. And yet, at the same time, he was held in the highest reverence by others. Conversing with this philosopher helped me to draw up a true intelligible and methodical scheme for life and manners, and never so much as to show the least sign of anger or any other disturbing thought, but to be perfectly calm and indifferent, yet tender hearted. However, he let me see in himself, that a man might show his good will significantly enough, significantly enough without noise and display, and likewise possess great knowledge without vanity and osten, ostentation. This man, bro, like he literally thinks non-linear. He literally is following one thread of thought and entangled with other threads of thought that emerge, because that's how his brain literally processes information. And the moment he is leaning towards one thought being the dominant thought, he questions that, because the question itself is how he processes things and the certainty. And this is the fascinating thing, because at least in my kind of own example, everyone wants certainty, but few are available spiritually, mentally, and kind of self assured wise from themselves to pursue everything equally with possibility. That they don't have biases, because biases provide you with security, with sense of certainty. Even falsified certainty is better than chaos. So that's why people are fascinated with um, meaning and with reading, with anything that could reassure them and make them certain of their choices. But someone who is this kind of curious, and not even curious, that the curiosity and the questioning things themselves is the processing um, progression in his mind, he cannot be assured of anything, because the moment he is assured of something, his brain is gonna look for anything else to doubt, because the doubting itself, as Kant literally says, I doubt, so I think, therefore I am. That's that's the different wired neuroplasticity and neural kind of neural wiring that most people wouldn't even understand or comprehend, because that's literally your, it's not a software issue, it's a hardware issue. 10. Alexander the grammarian taught me not to be ruggedly critical about words, nor find fault with people for improper proprieties, improprieties. Jesus, these words of phrase or pronunciation. Literally, he said, don't judge me, but to set them right by speaking the thing properly myself. This reminds me, there was this religious tale that two kids of this kind of religious figure are doing something like some ritual form, and another old man is doing the wrong form of these. So these two are doing it the right way, but because they are kids, they don't want to offend the old man. They literally ask the old man, "Hey, which of us is doing it wrong?" And the old man realizes, okay, you're both doing it right, but I'm doing it wrong. And that goes another layer deeper, because that's literally the depth of how you kind of argue for things. That even this kind of situation could provide insolence, because if two kids are doing exactly the same thing and are asking the old man to say who is doing it differently, and they're not doing it differently, that could actually come off as mockery. But if one of them is doing it wrong, that could literally undermine the actual lesson, because one of them would be actually, in actuality of things, doing it wrong. The only escape route would be that one of these kids, these kids, is doing it the exact manner of the old man, and the other one is doing it the right way. But again, if the old man knew the right kind of way, he wouldn't do it wrong. So the other kind of mental fuck would be here, that the old man is gonna, in this situation, choose the wrong way that the kid is doing and dismiss the right way, because there is no actual winning in this situation. And always this has rubbed me the wrong way, because if two kids are doing the same thing, and the actual contest and the kind of surface level of thinking about things is that there is a contest and there is no difference. So this literally comes as insolence and mockery. But yeah, so to set them right by speaking the thing properly myself. That's literally the whole thing. They did the right thing themselves, but they invited him to judge them, to be aware of his own misconduct. But depending on the old man, it could easily become of, okay, are you mocking me because you two are doing the same thing, you know? And that either by way of answer, assent, or inquiry, or by some such other indirect and suitable correction. 11. Fronto, that sounds so Italian. Fronto taught me that envy, tricking, and dissimulation are the character and consequences of tyranny, and that those we call patricians have commonly not much fatherly feeling in them. I fuck heavy with this guy because not only he sees patterns in others, he internalizes those patterns, which sounds so simple, but it's so difficult because you have literally bias towards your own opinions. A professor of mine who would have his he was the youngest PhD holder in philosophy of his school. So he literally told me that people aged up from 50, he was 55 at the moment, which is fascinating. But yeah, he told me do not argue with them unless they ask for it. And even if they ask for it, still don't engage, because when someone who is, we were 17 at that time, when you are 17 and you barely have the trial kind of subscription of free to life and experiences, you can switch your lane easily. As they say in the Japanese proverb, that the longer you linger in the wrong path, the more expensive is gonna be to correct course. They use a train metaphor or whatever. So his ideology was that when someone is 50 years old and is arguing or is talking about discussing a topic, and you are like 17, 20, 30, and not like closer to his age, there is two hidden biases that he himself doesn't realize. One of which is that he has this illusion of being wiser because he has had more experiences. And the other one is the growth into comfort of his own biases and belief system. Because the thing is that the more he leans towards those and lives with those ideologies, and this bleeds to another metaphor that I use. People say philosophy, I don't think about this, I don't think about. No, but everyone does, because the metaphor is that philosophy and belief system is this plane that you use to go from places to places. But most of the time, even until you die, you are on autopilot. When you, let's say, go on a trip, you don't think about the pilot, you don't think about the plane crashing, unless you have had a similar sensitivity to plane crashes, or you have indicators of this plane is not safe. You don't think about the plane if otherwise. And that's the beauty of philosophy, that you have this internalized, philosophized kind of belief systems so intricate to your identity that you don't even actually think about them. And you think, okay, I'm gonna go party, I'm gonna enjoy life, everyone dies, who cares, you know? that itself is a belief. That itself is a philosophy. That itself is a belief system. That's basically, everyone has this plane that they journey through life, but only until the plane they are riding, they are traveling with, is crushing down, they don't see the plane. And that's why so many great figures of philosophy in life and everything, they have had so hardship and so many difficulties that their current belief system is not answering them, and they have to switch for their survival. That's why most people don't even think about philosophy or anything unless they are forced to. Okay, so this is very interesting, because he literally says the character and consequence of tyranny, because that power and that kind of bias towards that kind of maturity and sense of inner bias is so sudden, is so silent, that it becomes part of your identity rather than opposed to it. Because if you see the enemy, you can fight it. A friend of mine is afraid of ghosts, and he is kind of a martial artist. And I say, okay, why are you afraid of ghosts? You can literally fucking box a lion. He says, because ghost, I cannot touch it. A lion, I can literally roar and scare him. I can throw a punch and be clawed to death, but I can fight back. I have hope. And another intersection of this, there was this study made on hope, that a group of rats were stuck in water, and they drowned after 15 minutes because they gave up swimming because there was no hope. But another group of rats, after 15 minutes that they were about to give up, they were saved. And the next time the same group of rats were in water, they swam for 60 hours. 15 minutes to 60 hours. Because every moment of that 60 hours not only changed your perception of time, because you're so locked on the survival that is definitely gonna come. That's the whole hoping thing of it, that you don't even realize it's been 60 hours. You say, okay, I'm at the 14th minute of my 15th minute survival. That's how hope works. So yeah, and that's how belief systems are so ingrained in your identity. And even this ghost fearing a friend of mine, he fears ghosts because there is no hope of winning. When you are fighting a lion, you have a 1% chance of scaring it away, or at least you can fight back. Fighting back gives you hope. But when you are literally fighting what you call a ghost, you don't have any chance. You don't have any hope. So that's basically it. And that ghost, as I think in metaphors and layered kind of analogies, this ghost is literally the enemy you don't see. That is part of your identity. But if the enemy is tangible, you can fight it. And power, as he literally says, is characteristic. That's a very meticulous word. It's a characteristic of tyranny rather than opposed to it, or consequence of this characteristic, which is so sublimely said. Okay, 12. As you see, I'm not narrating. I'm literally deepening the ideologies of this guy who, for better or worse, has the same mental wiring as me in 1600 years apart, which is fascinating. But yeah. 12. Alexander the Platonist advised me that without necessity I should never say to anyone, nor write in a letter, that I am not at leisure, nor make business an excuse to decline frequently the offices of humanity to those we dwell with. Okay, this is basically like my guy is reverse engineering society. So basically, not only showing you are at leisure gives your own subconscious the identity congruency that you are at leisure and you're gonna be more hyper focused about finding more things at leisure, but also bitching about your problems is not gonna solve your problems. In my personal experience, I had this guy literally um, talking about his problems every single day. And I started ignoring him. Not that I don't like him, he was a stranger, but he's a human being. I started ignoring him because I knew every single time he's gonna drain my energy, and I have so much energy for myself rather than him. And once I confronted him, I said, hey, I'm not your doctor, I'm not your lawyer, I'm not anyone who can help you. And the only help you can get is to actually think about your problems and solve them one by one. And he said, no, you don't understand how much money you have. And I said, okay, you have this much money. He said, I have 100 dollars left in my bank account. And that time I had €1. I said, okay, this is what I have, but I'm not gonna have a misery contest with you that okay, I have less than you. So okay, what's gonna be the conclusion of me having less than you? You know? And after that, he literally disappeared because he either is building towards solving his problems or he knows bitching about his problems is not gonna solve it to me, you know. But yeah, so that's the psychological effect of your own subconscious. There was a study made that people who felt they were lucky, they would see 50% more chances than those who don't think they are lucky. That's literally how your brain is wired. So to know this requires just insane levels of pattern recognition, because 1600 years ago this kind of scientifical mumbo jumbo wasn't there. It was just a man seeing the same pattern repeating over and over again, that he literally said, okay, this is the rule. Okay. 13. I learned of Catullus not to slight a friend for making a remonstrance. Okay, these are the words again. Though it should happen to be unreasonable, but rather to endeavor to restore him to his natural humor. That like Domitius and Athenodotus, okay, I'm not gonna, okay, it's just names. I should always speak well of those who had the care of my education, and that I should always preserve a hearty affection for my children. Okay, 14. I am indebted to Severus for the love I bear to my relations and towards justice and truth. He likewise made me acquainted with the character and sentiments of Cato, Brutus, Thrasea, Helvidius, and Dio, and gave me the idea of an equal commonwealth with equal rights and equal speech, and also of a monarchy where the liberty of the subject was principally regarded. To mention some more of my obligations to him, it was of him I learned not to grow wise by starts and sudden fancies, but to be a constant admirer of philosophy and improvement. I love this guy. I am in love with this guy, bro. He literally says what a friend of mine literally says every single time. He says, consistency is not glamorous, but it's godlike. And it's so true because I've been writing for 17 years every single day. Sure, I'm kind of obsessed with pen and with thinking and with elaborating my own thoughts on the page, that I'm doing it obsessively enough that it's like 6 to 10 hours a day. But with languages, I sometimes learn one word a day. Sometimes I do like go so deep that I read 7 hours in French or in fucking other languages. And voila, in when I was 17, I didn't know anything other than my respectable level of English, because my English is not native level, as you can see. But the thought of being infatuated with words and language as a living, breathing entity rather than a tool has left me with 7 languages I understand. I once was in this room that 5 people spoke 5 different languages, and not only I understood every uh, concept being uttered there, I felt so close to their own perspective on things, because each language has its own rules and personality to it, that each word is meticulously weighed with its emotional resonance with that kind of language sphere. But yeah, I really love this guy. 1600 years ago, this guy knew something that most people, even to this day, are having trouble understanding. That's why I'm literally, and it fascinated me that today, while narrating my own stories, that I'm documenting my actual writing. I have written like for 17 years, about to like share it with the world, because I'm not gonna like bitch to fucking publishers who don't understand a thing or two about writing, or even why there should even be a categorization, word cap, or anything. But at the very least, I'm documenting my own progression of writing. In 10 years, 20, 30 years, I'm going to look back at it and say, oh, nice, nice thematics. Because even now, narrating my own writing of a year ago, by writing like every single day for 5 to 6 hours, I see immense gap that my structural understanding, my word choices, my everything has evolved so immensely in 1 year. Imagine this looking back at it in 5 to 10 years. And that made me the idea that, okay, literally neuroscience wise, you deepen your understanding of things by reading it out loud, because not only your eyes are reading, your own voice is more familiar to you, so you have the cognitive bias of trust towards your own voice, that it deepens the knowledge. But also, literally reading through these lines, I pattern recognize my own patterns, and I teach to myself my understanding of it, to internalize whatever this guy is literally saying to me. And I'm gonna do this going forward. Monetization allowed, disallowed, or whatever. I know enough about YouTube that I've handled like 5 to 6 channels for 2 years now. So I know about YouTube enough that they can demonetize this video, and not this video, because this is I studied law, so I understand intellectual property. The author is dead and dead and dead and dead eons ago. But They can either demonetize this as reused content, but I'm adding my own insights. So it's not even reused content, it's literally documentation of my own analysis of whatever he's saying. So the content literally is mine. But also, I'm literally internalizing the knowledge I'm gathering from this. And even all that is failed, and this video is demonetized, just the channel itself is not going to be demonetized. It's going to have a strike one time, and it's going to be demonetized, and still the value is there that I'm literally internalizing an ancient, this is the ancient kind of knowledge. But with other books that I'm gonna do, with so many books that I read, that I have this tendency to postpone. I read like 100 pages a day, but that's not enough, you know? I need to not only read, but also internalize the reading I'm doing, you know? Like, I have this tendency towards reading successful people's history, not for entertainment, but for internalization. That I have identified this pattern that the more they read, the deeper they understand the patterns, the faster they find their own purpose in life, and they're literally obsessed with it. My pattern in life is like, okay, I'm obsessed with reading, writing, and reflecting my own thoughts in similes, stories, and everything, because I'm literally against the whole generation of self-help books. And that tells you, because Atomic Habits is outselling fucking Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. But that's not true, because Crime and Punishment is the cornerstone of three Goliath people of psychology in Freud, Nietzsche in philosophy, and literature itself. So Atomic Habit, the author of that book, has surely read more books that are not self-help, but actually are that deep human psychosis analysis of Dostoevsky or anything. So my whole literally beef with the whole generation of self-help enthusiasts is that self-help is a band-aid. You need stories to internalize the actual understanding of human nature, or these meditation-wise clarity of someone's mind literally reflected on the page. Self-help literally means do this, do that, and the results are this. There is no reason for it. There is no why you need to do it. There is, okay, this works, do it, so you are better than 90% of people. Sure, you can use Atomic Habit and grow the best business you can, but at the same time, that's just a band-aid. You can literally become another, let's say, Alex Hormozy, or another kind of early age billionaire, but at the same time don't know why. And the why, the philosophy behind everything, is your anchor, your emotional anchor, because as soon as Atomic Habit results falter, you fall. But when you know the reason, you pivot instead of looking for another self-help. But yeah, that's another thing. Let's read 14 again. I'm indebted to Severus for the love I bear to my relations and towards justice and truth. He likewise made me acquainted with the correct character and sentiments of Gato, Brutus, Teresia, Helvidius, and Dio, and gave me the idea of an equal commonwealth, with equal rights and equal speech, and also of a monarchy where the liberty of the subject was principally regarded. To mention some more of my obligations to him, it was of him I learned not to grow wise. This is such a golden line. I learned not to grow wise by starts and sudden fancies. My friends literally calls this dramatic compulsion of creation, but it's not sustained. So yeah, but to be a constant admirer of philosophy and improvement. Even Charlie Munger, reading 500 pages of a book a day, says, go to bed a little more wiser than the day before. That's literally it, but yeah. You see the patterns, right? I'm not like delusional about seeing all these patterns across millennia, across like different domains, because every fucking successful person I've studied, that I'm literally around 120 people studied, from Charlie Munger to fucking Pavlov to Cialdini or whatever. All of these fuckers are literally unison in one thing, that you need more information, you need more internalized information, and faster speed of decision making to navigate through life. That's basically it, but yeah. That a man ought to be generous and obliging, hope the best of matters, and never question the affection of his friends, to be free in showing a reasonable dislike of another, and no less clear in his own expectations and desires, and not to put his friends to the trouble of divining what he would be at. Okay, there is an interesting line here that hope the best of matters. I know someone who has who just turned 41, and he was a virgin at 26, and since then he has because of the insecurity, he has kept number of how many people, different people, he has slept with. This is a fascinating human study, but he has slept with 3,100 at that time I talked to him, 103 people, 3,103 people. And he was joking, he had a date that night that it was gonna be 104th in the first date. So, and he literally says one thing: go already having fucked the girl, go talk to the chick having already fucked her multiple times. And this is so fascinating, that literally is, no matter the language, no matter the person, no matter the niche, call it, hope the best of matters. It is so fascinating that how many people are getting to the same conclusion, but from different aspects of the same truth. Okay. 15. I learned from Maximus to command myself and not to be too much drawn towards anything, to be full of spirits under sickness and misfortune, to appear with modesty, obligingness. He loves this word. I don't know the original word or the author, the translator, but yeah. Obligingness and dignity of behavior, to turn off business smoothly as it arises, without drudging and complaint. Whatever he did, all men believed in him, that he spoke, so he thought. And whatever he did, that he did with a good intent. That reminds me of Jordan Peterson's saying, that he literally says, you have this community of selves stretched across time. You can betray someone now, but your betrayal would mean that your future self is gonna suffer. So who are you actually betraying? So yeah. So his argument is anything not good is actually in the detriment of your community of selves, which is so true. But yeah, he attained that greatness of mind not to wonder or start at anything, neither to hurry an enterprise nor sleep over it, never to be puzzled or dejected, nor to put on an appearance of friendliness, not to be angry or suspicious, but ever ready to do good and to forgive and speak truth. And all this as one who seemed rather of himself to be straight and right than ever to have been rectified. Nobody ever could fancy they were slighted by him, or dared to think themselves his betters. Besides all this, he had an agreeable wit. 16th. In my adoptive father, I observed a smooth and inoffensive temper, with great steadiness in keeping close to measures judiciously taken, a greatness proof against vanity and the impressions of pomp and power. From him a prince might learn to love business and action, and be constantly at it. This reminds me of the Rockefeller guy or fella that Munger studied him religiously, as well as Franklin. But I haven't studied Franklin, so I cannot tell. But Rockefeller has literally just one thing: action is the savior of man, and work is sacred. And this literally resonates at the Richest Man in Babylon book, that he too says work is the savior of man, because not only working makes you feel confidence in your abilities in practical terms, but also it deepens your practical knowledge, because the peak of understanding a thematic is to teach it. Even these videos, I'm internalizing my own understanding of the text I'm reading, be other books that I'm gonna do with Bragg for comprehension of words, with neuroplasticity, with everything else, but also teaching them to others deepens your own knowledge. I taught English for 1 year when I was 17 years old, and that gave me a deeper understanding of language itself. Maybe even that in my subconscious mind prepared me to learn 5 to 7 languages that I am learning these days. Okay. Where were we? From him, a prince might learn to love business and action, and be constantly at it, to be willing to hear out any proposal relating to public advantage, and undeviatingly, Jesus, these words, give every man his due, to understand the critical seasons and circumstances for rigor or remissness. But he's literally talking another language. Okay. To have no boy favorites, not to stand upon points of state and prerogative, but to leave his nobility at perfect liberty in their visits and attendance. And when he was upon his progress, no man lost his favor for not being at leisure to follow the court, to debate matters nicely and thoroughly at the council board, and then to stand by what was resolved on, yet not hastily to give up the inquiry, as one easily satisfied with sudden notions and apprehensions, to be constant to a friend without tiring or fondness, to be always satisfied and cheerful, to reach forward into the future and manage accordingly, not to neglect the least concerns. Uh, yeah, but all without hurry or being embarrassed. Further, by observing his methods and administration, I had the opportunity of learning how much it was the part of a prince to check the excesses of panegyric and flattery, to have his magazines and exchequer well furnished, to be frugal in his expenses without minding being lampooned for his pains, not to worship the gods to superstition, not to court the populace either by prodigality or compliment, but rather to be sober and firm upon all occasions. This guy is literally fighting himself in real time, and I love to see it. That's literally how I write half of my books, but yeah. Keeping things in a steady decorum without chopping and changing of measures, to enjoy the plenty and magnificence of a sovereign fortune without bragging and yet without making excuse, so as freely to enjoy them when present, but when wanting, not to be mortified at the loss of them. Bro, this guy literally says, enjoy when it is, be ready, so you're ready, be ready when it isn't, and ironically enough, you're gonna have it, because the whole game of life is that it's a seduction game, that you need to have it and cherish it, but not need it, and don't cry when it's not there. I was talking to this guy who was reading a lot of books, and he was literally on his yacht and traveling to his private island to have this private party, and he was literally throwing the foursome orgasm in the same yacht. And he literally said, other than my book that I'm reading now, I can live with everything else, without everything else. And it wasn't just pleasantry. I know the guy. He literally has lived that life. And other than books, he doesn't give a shit about any of that. It's just fascinating, but yeah. Books and traveling. So yeah, he literally has visited every single country once at least, which is fascinating. But yeah. Okay. And thoroughly qualified to govern himself and others. Govern himself and others. This guy knows how to actually speak, bro. Okay. There was one of these things that are once in a lifetime. You never have an emperor and a philosopher in one person. And this guy, that's why he has lived beyond his empire. I call it a world empire rather than a world empire. His world empire has crumbled, and is literally, his ash is kind of not even there. But his words are beating with enthusiasm that he wrote 1600 years ago, which is fascinating. But where were we? As for those that were philosophers in earnest, he had a great regard for them, but without reproaching those who were otherwise, nor yet being led away by these. Jesus, this is literally 3 layers of actual fighting your thoughts. Philosophy is good to understand deep. Those who don't understand, you're not better than them, so you're not gonna be morally superior to those who don't understand them, because you do. That's such a quotation. He was condescending and familiar in conversation, and pleasant too, but not too tiresomeness and excess. This guy is just about balance. I don't know, like, how you maintain that kind of balance in every single thread of thought you have in your mind. That's so exhausting. But right. As for his health, he was not anxious about it, like one fond of living or over studious of bodily appearance, and yet managed his constitution with that care as seldom to stand in need of the assistance of physic or outward applications. Further, he never envied and browbeat, I don't know that word, those that were eminent in any faculty or science, as eloquence or knowledge of the laws or morals, but the contrary, encouraged them in their ways and prompted their reputation. He observes, no wonder this guy is turned out to be like this. He's been literally cherry picked of whole existence of people who are rich in personality and depth of understanding human nature, and he's been literally raised by them. No wonder. He observed fitness and custom in all his actions, and yet did not seem to regard them. He was not fickle and fluttering in his humor, but constant both to place and undertaking, and I have seen him, after violent fits of the headache, return fresh and vigorous to his usual business. He kept but few things to himself, and those were secrets of government. He was very moderate and frugal in shows, public buildings, liberalities, and such like, being one that did not so much regard the popularity as the rightness of an action. It was none of his custom to bathe at unusual hours, or to be overcome with the fancy of building, to study, eating, and luxury, to value the curiosity of his clothes, or the shape and person of his servants. His cloak came from Lurium, his villa on the coast at Lanuvium. He wore for the most part only a tunic, and the tussulum he would scarcely so much as put on a cloak without making an excuse for it. To take him altogether, there was nothing of ruggedness, immodesty, or eagerness in his temper. Neither did he ever seem to drudge and sweat at the helm. Things were dispatched at leisure and without being felt, and yet the administration was carried on without confusion, with great order, force, and uniformity. Upon the whole, what was told of Socrates is applicable to him, for he was so much master of himself that he could either take or leave those conveniences of life with respect to which most people are either uneasy without them or temperate with them. Now, to hold on with fortitude in one condition and sobriety in the other is a proof of a great soul and an impregnable virtue, such as he showed in sickness of Maximus. I have to thank the gods that my grandfathers, parents, sister, preceptors, relations, friends, and domestics were almost all of them persons of probity, and that I never happened to oblige or misbehave myself towards any of them, notwithstanding that my disposition was such that had occasion offered, I might have acted thus. This is such a cute insight that he knows himself so well that if, let's say, he was hungry enough, he was pissed enough, he was whatever, he would actually do such misbehavior, but he wasn't put in that situation, those impossible dilemmas. That's very noteworthy. But that shows his self-awareness. But by the goodness of the gods, I met with no provocations to reveal my infirmities. It is likewise by their providence that my childhood was no longer managed by my grandfather's mistress, that I preserved the flower of my youth, that I was subject to the emperor my father, and bred under him, who was the most proper person living to put me out of conceit with pride, and to convince me that it is possible to live in a palace without the ceremony of guards, without richness of distinction of habit, without torches, statues, or such other marks of royalty and state, and that a prince may shrink himself almost into the figure of a private gentleman, and yet act nevertheless with all the force and majesty of his character when the common will requires it. It is the favor of the gods that I happened to meet with a brother whose behavior and affection is such as to contribute both to my pleasure and improvement. Jesus, now I'm not even able to read the basic words. Interesting. It is also their blessing that my children were neither stupid nor mishapen, that I made no further advances in rhetoric, poetry, and such other amusements, which possibly might have engaged my fancy too far. Okay? Had I found myself a considerable proficient, that without asking I gave my governors that share of honor which they seemed to desire, and did not put them off from time to time with promises and excuses, because they were yet but young, that I had the happiness of being acquainted with Apollonius, Rusticus, and Maximus, that I have a clear idea of the life in accordance with nature, and the impression frequently refreshed, so that, considering the extraordinary assistance and directions of the gods, it is impossible for me to miss the road of nature, unless by refusing to be guided by the dictates and almost sensible inspirations of heaven. It is literally emphasizing the neural pathways that form in repetition. It is by their favor that my constitution has held out so well under a life of fatigue and business, that I never had to do with Benedictor or Theodotus, and when I fell into some fits of love, I was soon cured, that when I fell out with Rusticus, as it frequently happened, I was not transported into any act of violence, that I had the satisfaction of my mother's life and company a considerable while, though she was destined to die young, that when I was willing to relieve the necessities of others, I was never told that the exchequer was empty, and again it is they that kept me from standing in need at any man's fortune. Further, it is from them that my wife is so very obedient and affectionate. That Cap, his wife literally cheated on him every single night, but I'm gonna I'm gonna let that slide for his simplicity and naivety. But okay, and so remote from luxury. Again, Cap, but okay. That I had choice of good governors for my children, that remedies were prescribed me in a dream against giddiness and spitting of blood. Spitting or spilling, okay. Spitting is weird, but as caetus by an ointment, that when I had a mind to look into philosophy, I did not meet with a sophist to instruct me, that I did not spend too much time in reading history. Interesting, he did not read history. That's very odd because every great man that I've read upon was obsessed with history, and this is itself is fucking history. So interesting. Maybe he means like instead of great men's uh, lifestyle, but about like political history. This is so interesting. Okay. Chopping logic or considering the heavens. Now all these points could never have been compassed without a protection from above and the gods presiding over fate. Okay, he's deriding gods too much, but okay. This was written in the country of the Quadi at Granua. Book 1 ended. Okay, let's move to the next one. I like this style of reading because that deepens my own understanding of his perspectives, but also it gives me an excuse to actually read more because reading with your eyes, you either fast read and comprehend the concepts rather than taking every sentence, or you have this nagging voice in your head that reads every single line, lingering on pronunciation. Yeah, pronunciation in your head. That's fascinating. But reading out loud, you literally pronunciate and you move the fuck on. But yeah, interesting. But yeah, till the next one.